The United States Department of Education has implemented a new set of regulations known as the Gainful Employment and Financial Value Transparency Rules. These rules are designed to test whether career programs produce graduates who earn enough to justify the cost of their tuition. For the cosmetology and personal appearance sector, the projected outcome of this test is catastrophic. Between 92.5 and 98% of Title IV cosmetology programs are mathematically projected to fail the state earnings threshold. Failing this test carries an immediate and severe consequence known as the Pell penalty. If a school's graduates do not meet the mandated earnings test for 2 consecutive years, the institution permanently loses its ability to offer federal student loans and Pell grants. Because the vast majority of accredited beauty schools rely entirely on federal student aid to operate, this regulation triggers a mass extinction event. Hundreds of vocational training centers across the country will be wiped out within a 3-year window. Policymakers look at a 98% failure rate and conclude that these schools suffer from universally poor instructional quality. The empirical data points to a different reality entirely. The failure lies in a severe structural misclassification of the sector itself. Title IV of the Higher Education Act was built to fund traditional post-secondary degrees. The underlying assumption of this system is that graduation leads directly to standard W-2 payroll employment inside an established corporate structure. The personal appearance sector operates completely outside that conventional corporate model. It is a highly fragmented, micro-entrepreneurial trade where the ultimate destination is self-employment. The prevailing theory in federal education policy is that granting vocational schools access to the Title IV system creates an access ceiling. The logic dictates that federal subsidies allow low-income students to afford training they otherwise could not. Real-world pricing data reveals the exact opposite. Title IV inclusion actually functions as a price floor. The presence of maximum allowable student loans and Pell grants artificially inflates the cost of entry for every student in the system. The collapse of beauty education results from forcing a university-style funding model onto a decentralized trade, creating a massive market distortion. To observe how beauty schools function without federal distortion, we can look at the state of Texas. Texas serves as a massive natural experiment, revealing exactly what happens when this industry operates entirely outside the federal aid system. This data table compares the institutional footprint of cosmetology schools based on federal participation. Out of 824 licensed schools in Texas, only 14% participate in Title IV programs. The remaining 86% operate as private, non-Title IV institutions. Comparing the tuition for the exact same state-mandated training hours reveals a stark discrepancy. The federally funded Title IV schools charge between $13,000 and $25,000. Their non-Title IV counterparts charge between $4,700 and $8,000. This pricing behavior aligns with the Bennett hypothesis. This economic concept argues that when federal financial aid becomes available, institutions blithely raise their tuition to match it, confident that taxpayer subsidies and guaranteed loans will absorb the difference. Part of this inflation is driven by administrative burden. Participating in Title IV requires high national accreditation fees and complex federal reporting through the EASE audit system. This creates a small school tax that institutions pass directly onto the student. The Texas data proves a difficult reality. Applying federal financial aid to this specific sector punishes students by tripling their debt load while offering no acceleration toward their state licensure. If non-Title IV schools can prepare students efficiently, why do many state programs mandate up to 1,500 hours of training before a candidate can even cut hair? The answer lies in the financial incentives of the institutions themselves. The industry suffers from strict regulatory capture. In many states, the licensure boards responsible for setting the required training hours are heavily populated by individuals who own or have direct ties to for-profit beauty schools. These extended hours fuel the clinic floor model. On a typical clinic floor, enrolled students perform hair, nail, and skin services on paying members of the general public. The student receives the required training hours, but the institution keeps all the service revenue. Looking at a standard operating budget, schools rely on this unpaid student labor to generate between 10 and 25% of their total operating revenue. Keeping hour requirements artificially high is a mechanism for institutional profit. the design effectively treats enrolled students as unpaid, revenue-generating staff rather than learners. This system dynamics flowchart visualizes the financial reality of a newly licensed cosmetologist. The average graduate leaves a Title IV program carrying $10,000 in debt. However, their median initial earnings average around $16,600 per year. The new Gainful Employment rule dictates that to keep federal funding, graduates must earn more than an average high school graduate with no post-secondary education. High school graduates easily out-earn the cosmetologist's initial $16,600. The Department of Education measures these earnings using IRS and Social Security Administration W-2 data. They measure the cosmetologist exactly as they would an entry-level accountant. The personal appearance microeconomy rejects W-2 tracking. The field operates on cash transactions, high variable tips, and self-reported income, causing official federal data to chronically underreport the actual take-home pay of the worker. Furthermore, a beauty professional's income is heavily suppressed in their first 2 years. Independent stylists require a multi-year runway to build the stable, recurring clientele necessary to reach their full profitability. Applying a corporate payroll yardstick to a cash and tip microeconomy guarantees a false failure rate. The GE metrics penalize the industry for low initial wages, entirely masking the sector's long-term viability. Federal regulators must recognize beauty education as a massive, decentralized incubator for small business ownership. Over 33% of workers in the personal appearance sector are self-employed. In the broader United States workforce, the self-employment rate hovers between 6 and 7%. The demographic breakdown of this entrepreneurship is highly specific. Women own 59% of employment-based salon businesses, and minorities own 39%. Both figures outpace national economic averages by wide margins. This 2x2 matrix from the Bureau of Labor Statistics plots occupational risk against the rise of generative AI. Personal appearance workers land securely in the lowest risk quadrant. AI can easily replicate the document-heavy tasks of software developers and legal analysts. It cannot replicate the tactile feedback, non-routine manual dexterity, and complex social interaction required to cut hair or provide skincare. By enforcing misaligned gainful employment metrics, the federal government is actively dismantling a highly resilient, automation-proof entrepreneurial pathway for women and minorities. Fixing this market distortion requires federal agencies to treat beauty education as vital workforce infrastructure. The Department of Education should transition to WIOA-style outcome-based aid. Under this model, the government shifts the financial risk away from the student, reimbursing tuition only after the school documents state licensure and a successful 6-month job placement. The Department of Education cannot solve this alone. The Small Business Administration must become the primary partner in this vocational pipeline. Instead of requiring 300 hours of unpaid clinic floor labor to inflate school revenue, regulators should mandate that those final hours be spent drafting business plans and securing pre-approval for an SBA microloan. The objective is to stop saddling students with $10,000 of predatory debt and instead equip them with the working capital required to open independent salon suites and booth rentals immediately upon graduation. Decouple the state licensure boards from school owners. Align federal capital with the microeconomic reality of the worker. By treating the beauty sector as a small business engine, the government can transform a regulatory failure into a highly resilient economic asset.